Hi, everybody, and welcome back to On the Roof. Today we're getting back to where it all began. Actually, the second guest I ever had, and it's what catapulted this into what it's hopefully becoming right now. So I'd like to introduce guitar virtuoso Adam Rogers. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Scott. Nice to be here.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
So what's going on with Adam Rogers in this, with the pandemic that we're in? You're a New York City guy. Everything's different. What's going on with you?
Wow. Well, since the the shutdown, I've been basically shut down.
All right, don't elaborate.
I've been in the city. I was supposed to be traveling a lot, performing, and like a lot of people who do what I do, I've had a lot of tours canceled, recording work, all that stuff is on hold for the time being. So, I've been in town. I've gotten out of town a few times to, breathe some fresh air, which has been great. But certainly for the first 2.5 months, I think, of the shutdown, I was just in New York and staying inside for the most part. I mean, I was venturing out to shop and walk around and stuff. But, and, as we were talking prior to the start of the interview, I've been doing some cool online live stream things, a couple of them actually only up until this point, one masterclass and one live stream concert, and have been, at home working on music all the time. I have to say it's not totally different from my normal life, in that when I'm not performing or recording or I stay home and work on music a lot. So it's probably, I don't know, maybe twice or 3 times the amount of time at home. So I've been trying to, use it to develop things that, musically develop things in a way that's been very constructive, I have to say. And it's not a situation where I sort of set out consciously to accomplish certain things, but I think sort of as a byproduct of not having to present anything that I'm working on, it's almost like I just feel like a kid working on music again. It's not, I'm just doing it, I've always been doing this for myself and because I love it, probably a lot more so than having these sort of career aspirations, but it's been that multiplied by a factor of 10. So I think as much as I miss playing with other people and performing, I think that it will end up as having been a productive time for me musically.
Yeah. Do you notice a difference in your flow energetically as you're trying to create during this, with something like this going on during this time?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, I'm a pretty disciplined practicer. I've always just had this thing that I do every day on the guitar that I think, I sort of feel like it's my job in the universe, like regardless of if anybody else is looking, this is what I have to do. I think it also kind of keeps me from going insane, just in general as a person. This is the thing, for why I'm not completely sure, because of my innate connection to music or whatever it is, that I feel better when I'm doing this. It's like I need to do it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, the One of the attributes of this period that I realized, and I've realized it after the couple of times, and literally I think it's been 2 times that I've gotten together with another musician in a sort of socially distanced setting to play. I've realized how much I miss playing with other people, and how important it is for me to play with other people, because I need outside musical information. I felt a bit, I don't notice this when if I don't play with other people, which, as I said, has been very minimal in the last couple of months, but I sort of feel like, in spite of what I said before about how I think this will end up being a very productive time, it's almost like I'm recirculating the same air over and over again. It's like I've been inside like an airplane cabin, creative. Yeah. And there's only so much I feel that, you know, it's like or for me, I can say, as the kind of musician I am, I don't think I'm unique in this, that there's only so much of my information that I can sort of get inspiration from. At some point, I need to get, like a couple of weeks ago when I did this live stream with one of my dearest friends, a very longtime colleague, and really one of the greatest saxophonists, I think, living today, whose name is Chris Potter.
Oh, yeah.
We just played duo for this live stream, and it was like, I felt like I had been in like a padded cell for 2 months, and somebody took me and just put me under like a waterfall. Yeah. And I was, oh my God, this is so,
wow.
And it's that, I mean, he's an incredible musician, but just the act of improvising with another creative person, it's like, you know, I've played so much and I've worked so hard on music, and again, I'm not alone in this, that I can, you know, actively and spontaneously respond to musical moments as they're happening, and that's what somebody like myself needs to do. It's like food. You know, a lot of the stuff that I do on my own, it's almost like R&D and mechanical maintenance and developing new things. Of course, you need to have that time with yourself and with your instrument and with music, but ultimately you have to, you know, it's almost like there are these little tentacles that are just dying to connect with another human being and musician, and without that external information, there's only so far I feel like I can go. And having said that, there's a tremendous amount of creative stuff you can do by yourself, even in making, you know, a solo record where you're playing all of the instruments. I mean, you can do amazing stuff. It's just it's a different feeling. And for people who are, you know, ostensibly improvisers like myself, that act to me sort of requires other input.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was your question or not.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting perspective, because as an artist, I think your perspective is unique to the average person. I hear people complaining, and you see how the angst that people have just because they're being stifled by the conditions, right? But they're being arrogant about it in certain cases, and saying, you know, this is too much for me. I'm not making this little sacrifice for the good of the big picture. It's you have to get. That's where the creativity comes in. I'm just thinking, somebody like yourself. As you were talking, I'm thinking, well, if you're confined and you got all of this creative energy, yeah, you can work on your chops, but where does that external inspiration come from? Maybe initially, sure, it's all new, but after a month,
You know,
Of being confined after 2 months of being confined, does that wear on you?
it wasn't until I got together in these two times over the last 4 months that I did that I sort of realized, wow, I didn't realize how much I missed
Yes,
this,
see,
how
that's
much I
profound,
needed.
right?
So when I'm by myself working on stuff, I'm just doing it. I don't feel like,
Working. Yeah,
oh, this is a drag. I can't, I don't even notice
that's good.
these things that like this missing playing with other people,
Right.
because I just sort of get into my zone and I do the work. And certainly given, on a to your point about the larger picture and the what's important for everybody, I don't ask myself any questions, or I should say, the question as to whether doing this is positive or efficacious or the right thing to do is obvious to me. This is what we're facing.
Yeah.
You just do it. So I don't have any feelings of like, oh man, people are keeping me inside. It's not, it's a pandemic. This thing is really dangerous for me and for other
Yeah.
people. Yeah. And also, as a friend of mine stated the other day, my business will maybe among the last ones to recover from this thing, right? Like I'm not an essential worker. There are a lot of people whose areas of business are going to open up before a concert hall does or before a bar will. And
Yeah.
I don't argue. I have no problem with that in terms of what is a smart combating of this problem that we're in. But I want it to be over as soon as possible so I can get back to
Absolutely.
doing what it is that I do. And I mean, for me, it seems a long way off, And in terms of, from a sort of epidemiological perspective, I'm fine with that. But I want people to be smarter than they're being right now so that we can eventually get back to what it is that we do.
Yeah.
Anyway, that might be a bit of a tangent, but I guess I've always been sort of a practically minded person. Whatever the challenge is, I just sort of deal with it, try to get the best out of it. There's times I felt like I was going to go bananas, just this underlying stress of what we're dealing with that continues, like, as you know, and anybody, well, as is obvious, New York is in a much, much better place than it was, but I'm not, this thing could come raging back, man, you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah.
So.
I think, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, I'm just, I'm looking at the trying to look at the long-term ramifications, not ramifications, the long-term plan here, going into the fall and the winter flu season. I mean, we have to be super careful.
I know.
Science doesn't give a fuck what you think.
Hello.
I mean, nature, I should say. The study of nature is science, but nature's just doing its thing, man. It doesn't care whether you want to wear a fucking mask or not.
It's undefeated, too. Mother Nature and Father Time, they don't lose.
I don't care.
Yeah, it's
up to us to be cautious and measured and just be cool, just deal with it's a drag, but it's what we got to deal with. Anyway, again, that might be a bit of a tangent from what you had initially asked.
What did I ask?
I don't remember. How I'm dealing with this.
Listen, that's that's the thing about this, is it is so complex, But one thing I always liked about you, Adam, is that even though you're world traveled and everything, you're a New Yorker, like you're through and through. You represent a lot of what New York is in your music and who you jam with, how you jam. Like, there's something that New York is so lacking right now as part of its character. It's like, going down to the 55 bar and seeing, Dice. Like those nights, that's so much a part of what makes this city what it is when it's going right. And there's so many people that need that. I'm one of the ones that need that energy to go and just enjoy that energy, right? But you're providing that energy, so and it's serving you in a different way. But what is that like not having that option at your fingertips now?
I've performed so much and been, in clubs and stuff so much that, in a way, it's like I don't want to say I've done it already because I plan to keep doing it as long as anybody will allow me to keep doing it. But, I'm fine, man. I mean, again, whatever the scene is, I just sort of deal with it. I don't miss it terribly. I'm sure if I went and played a gig, much like I was saying, getting together with my colleagues and playing, I might go, wow, I can't believe we haven't been able to do this for 4 months.
Yeah.
But now I just sort of, it's like, this is what I got to deal with,
Yeah.
I got my health, my family's healthy.
Yeah.
I got a whole bunch of stuff in here, and, I can eat.
Yeah.
I got air conditioning.
Who's better than you?
Right. I mean, so I'm okay. I'm fine with it. Again, right. I think I'm a bit of a. I mean, I don't think I'm a narrow-minded person, but in a way, my gaze just sort of. I've always been sort of just like, whatever the task is, I just sort of focus on it and just deal with that.
Right.
Maybe in a way that's a little tunnel visiony. I think certainly in ways that have helped me do what I do, that to focus on these incredibly detailed tasks that are necessary to learning how to play an instrument really well. Maybe for disadvantageous and advantageous ways in life, I just sort of look at this one little dot in front of me and sometimes don't really think about much else. So
good for you, man. I wish I could be like that. That's a good discipline to have.
I don't know. I'm not saying it's positive or negative or anything.
Right.
It's just,
yeah.
So now
I think it's positive.
Right. Now I see this as a species, as a society. Our task is to try to mitigate the effects of this virus, which has been very destructive. So I'm happy to participate in the collective, response, or not response like the virus is another person, the collective act of trying to do the right thing here. It upsets me and angers me and a lot when I see people being seemingly so selfish or unintelligent or, So, anyway.
Yeah. I want to get into a little music with you because since we did this the first time we did the interview and you came up to the roof, I've seen you dozens of times, and every time that you're playing with like a real first class level of musicians. I've seen you with Brian Blade and Ravi and Steve Cardenas. All these. I mean, it's always it's a top shelf level of guys, right? And when you play with Nate and FEMA and when you're doing the Dice thing, right? Mm-hmm. I've never seen you like take a song off. Like like every time I see you play, it's always like this. It's complicated. It's intense. It's refined. It's serious. It's like, I mean, even when you're ripping, you're doing Voodoo Child or something. Like, I remember, like I was sending that, like streaming that one out. These guys fucking wailing over it. Look at this. But even when you're doing that, there's so much that goes into it. It's not like there's no lollipop in that at all.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Where does that come from? I mean, as you brought up discipline, right?
I don't know. It would be hard for me to, if I understand your meaning. I don't know that I could talk about it really that objectively because I'm so involved in it as it's happening. I mean, it's just my my approach to music, I guess. I'm so into it. I mean, there are times where I'm more into it than others, I guess, but as a sort of a baseline level of involvement, I just, I feel it very strongly, and I don't know. I just when I do it, I guess I do it in a pretty committed way. Again, even at saying that, I can't really be objective about it. I only know that when I'm playing, I want to try to, discover something that I don't know how to do, or, and I guess there's all kinds of emotional and psychological things that I'm going through when I'm playing, as a lot of musicians do, where I'm, expressing things and, even in a sort of banal way, blowing off steam, and also I just, I have this, the to the extent that I'm aware of it, and I have am pretty well educated as a listener. I have the weight of the history of music on me. When I'm playing, I'm thinking about John Coltrane. I mean, in the back of my head are all kinds of people. That gentleman on your T-shirt right now, these are the people who made me want to play music. These are the musicians who I feel this incredible debt of gratitude. None of this is conscious as I'm playing, but I mean, this is, if we're playing something like Voodoo Child, I have that, 15 Hendrix versions in my head that are, it's almost, go ahead, man, what are you doing? So I don't know if that objectively, it's impossible for me to objectively answer that, but I know that when I'm playing, I feel, and I don't know what the word to use would be, but, I feel this sort of emotional and intellectual compulsion as I'm playing. The intellectual being the things that I have to whatever extent I have to think about while I'm playing, and this feeling of, fuck. I don't know. It's a pretty inarticulate way to say it, and forgive the expletive, but that's what I hear when I listen. I listen to a lot of music, and the music that I'm drawn to is music that I feel that from, whether it's Hendrix or Trane or, a late Beethoven string quartet or whatever it is, this feeling of like, that life is an intense experience, right? We've all been through all this stuff. I want to hear what your experience is in life through your music. When I listen to John Coltrane, one of the reasons that to me, his music is still so powerful, that I hear that feeling in his playing. They're not just notes, it's
right.
this seeking of something I words can't describe, and they're not supposed to describe. That's why you have music, right? It's like it's the sort of the indescribable, and that's what made me want to play music. That's why I was, crazy enough to choose this as a career. I mean, it's a compulsion. As I was alluding to earlier, I never really. I mean, I guess to the extent that I have been career-minded. I mean, I know this is my career, but I've never been in it for any, I don't know, career reasons. Like, if money were the main goal, I would have done something else. There's a lot easier ways to make a lot of money, and a lot of ways that you can make a lot more money. That's certainly not it, as is probably obvious. But it's this sort of abstract compulsion, I think, that we as musicians feel, chasing some sort of, I don't know, emotional, spiritual, intellectual thing.
Was there ever a point in your life, because you're like a musician's musician, I don't really know anybody that's a serious musician that if they haven't already heard you wouldn't hear you and instantly just respect the work that you've already put in to get where you are, right? Did you ever get to that point in your career where it kind of just like, I'm a lifer, man, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, there's going to be no plan B, this is it?
I think that I had that feeling from when I was
Get-go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never even one iota of doubt in my mind. I mean, I think there are times in only one time in my life, like when I was around 30, that I went through kind of a difficult period, and I thought, wow, one could do a lot of different things as a human being, and I've only chosen to do this one thing, which necessitates for me being in a very specific place geographically, namely New York. And I thought, maybe I should have, a more varied experience as a human being. The kind of experience that trying to excel at a really high level in a craft like music doesn't permit. But other than that, I've never had, it was clear to me from when I was very young that there was never any plan B. I never, my parents, as I'm sure we talked about in our previous interview, were both in show business. So I was encouraged to do this by my folks, and I also knew that it was doable, right? Yeah. Like I had grown up around people who were professional performers who made a living and had nice lives. So I knew this was not like some pie in the sky thing.
Right.
So my only thing was, and I was encouraged by my parents to study the hell out of it so that I had, a lot of developed abilities that would allow me to make a living. Part of I don't know if it was this objective, but going to study classical music in college was, I think, if I had any objectivity as a dingbat 17-year-old, I thought, well, let me really learn how to do, investigate this other part of my craft so that I can become a more thorough musician, mostly for artistic reasons, but also because I was looking at, all right, you're going into this.
Picture.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I had as much ammunition as possible, that I wouldn't ever have to do anything else, and it was definitely helpful. Prior to starting to be able to do what I really wanted to do artistically as a musician, I was able to make a living as a musician because I could play receptions at weddings and jingles and all kinds of different things, which was a testament to the particular areas of study that I had done as a young person, or as a result of, I should say. But I never had any doubt that this would be my path.
We mentioned before, I mentioned Yorma and Jack, right? Jack, talking with him, I have to go here with you because, I know how the reverence you have for Jimi, right? And I do too, but I'm a listener. I'm not a musician, so it's obviously a whole different level. One of the things he's known for is, I think it was Are You Experienced, the one track that he played on.
Electric Ladyland,
right, I'm sorry.
Voodoo Child.
That is a good part of who Jack Cassidy's reputation is, and that was an opportunity that presented itself. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to be sitting down with Corky Lang from Mountain.
Oh wow, cool!
And he played with West Bruce and Lang,
right?
And I just had to rifle through his autobiography, right? And there's so many references with Jimi. just getting some kind of acknowledgement from somebody like who was held in the highest reverence by every other musician, and
Yeah.
everyone with an ego stepped to the side and let Jimi go. That's just to me. Every time I get another peek into that, I get it's like, wow, because that's just I know the ego. I don't know music the way some people know music, but I do know ego, and ego doesn't give a shit. Like we were talking about the science not giving a shit. Ego don't give a shit about a whole lot.
Right.
Usually it'll override most, but then there's some things that just kind of transcend that, and he was one. So can you just, again, I think we delved into this the last time, but what was the attraction and the ultimate impression that just Jimi and his music made on you?
Well, when I first started playing guitar, probably when I was 11 or something, somebody, probably after just a few months of trying to learn some songs on the guitar, somebody played me, I don't remember what record it was, probably one of those first three, or the three studio records that he produced when he was alive. And the effect, it was so long ago, I can't remember exactly, but I remember just being floored in a lot of different ways. And it made me want to try to do whatever I thought it was that he was doing at that time. And I was really young, but there was something about the sound of, again, I don't remember what record it was, the sound, the playing, this sort of overarching feeling of the music that just wiped me out. I was always really taken with the sound of the electric guitar, even way before I played it. I remember the first time I was at a party, I remember this very clearly for some reason, that a friend of my parents was having, and they were playing the theme from Shaft on the stereo. This is probably like when it was on the radio.
Yeah,
and there's a wah-wah guitar, very famous wah-wah guitar pattern on that. And I had never heard a wah-wah guitar. I was about 6 or 7 years old. And I was so freaked out over the sound of the wah-wah that I ran over to the side, the speaker that it was coming out of, I think this was a stereo recording of the Isaac Hayes tune, and kept going back to the record player and putting it back to the beginning of the tune. It was at a party. I think my parents' friends finally had to say, hey, cut it out. You keep playing the same tune over and over again. But the sound of the electric guitar, it like freaked me out, So I think when I heard that Hendrix record, all of those sounds that I had probably never heard before, and this is probably 1976, 1977, so it wasn't like, if it was Are You Experienced, it was only 10 years old. So there was this just sort of overarching feeling of, whoa, what the hell is this? And then when I started to get into his music in a more detailed way and started to learn how to play the guitar, all of the things about his playing, his sound, his rhythm, he was miles and miles above the level of musician that a lot of people who in that sort of psychedelic 60s scene, he was another kind of musician. He had toured as a journeyman side person with Little Richard Isley Brothers, the Temptations, Curtis Knight. He had a very, very different experience. Like all of those, like Clapton and the Stones and all that stuff. It's like he was another breed of
They
musician.
were the ones bowing down to him, in their prime.
Yeah, and he had a completely different, and, culturally, societally speaking, all those guys were trying to imitate Black American music.
Yes.
Jimi was Black American music.
Yeah.
He was a Black American young man, and who had this vision on top of, if you listen to Hendrix, you can hear the history of the blues and R&B in a very, very deep way. A lot of the
Oh,
things
yeah.
that he did. And then he had this incredible vision. And by the way, at 23, 24 years old, I mean, as we all know, he
Yeah.
died at 27. He
Right.
did all that before he was a kid.
His solo career was like 3 years.
Yeah. And to have that kind of vision, I mean,
I
you
know.
know, it's incredible.
The
He was,
impact
yeah,
on so
yeah.
many.
And what we were talking about, I think, prior to the interview, you know, how there's music that I really loved and admired when I was really young, that when I listen to it now, I'm not quite as impressed by. That's not the case with Hendrix. I still put those, I mean, I'm as blown away now by those records as I was when I was 11 and 12. Again, referring to the point I was making about John Coltrane's music, the powerful things about Hendrix's music, to me, they are just powerful. It's not like, oh, they were powerful in 1967, or they were powerful to me when I was 11.
Right. Yeah,
They're-
yeah, that's a
it's
good
like-
point.
I oftentimes, speaking of the energy that incredible music provides or emanates, I oftentimes think of it like, it's like you're standing next to a fire, right? There's no arguing that there's heat.
Yeah, yeah.
It's-
Yeah.
It's debatable. It's pure energy, you know? There's music that's not really that happening that doesn't generate that kind of energy. It's like, okay, well,
Right.
there's music that does to me. It's like you can feel the electromagnetism coming off it. And Hendrix's music had that, you know? And I mean, you know, more specifically, like musically specifically, his time, we call it as a musician, his rhythmic feel was incredible, man. I mean, his rhythm guitar playing, like, you know, people think of Hendrix in a lot of different ways, but, you know, maybe talk about his lead guitar playing. What he did rhythmically on the guitar, and he would play these rhythm patterns that also had melodic phrases sort of built into them. And it's amazing, man. It's badass.
Well, you know, that's that power trio. There is no rhythm guitarist along with them. He's doing both, like he's doing it all. And there's a certain, see, there were a few of those power, Cream, another one, and some bigger than others. And what you guys do with Dice, that's a power trio. I mean, you, Nate, and FEMA, I mean, this is like, we're at a high level. And especially at 55, more so than anywhere else, because it's so fucking tiny. And you guys are like stuck in this little space, and what comes out of that little space, I got, you know, it touches me, but it brings me to that kind of element,
Right.
of you know, like that kind of power. You know, and
Well,
Nate banging the fuck out of them drums, man. He is something else. Holy shit.
Totally bad dude. Yeah, I mean, the inspiration is certainly there's a lot of inspiration from Jimi's music, you know. It's a huge part of who I am.
Has anyone else? We mentioned John Coltrane, and he's another one that just when he transcends time too, as far as the amount of people that he influenced. Right? What was his influence on you?
Massive. I mean, continues to be. He was when I first really. I mean, my father was at times a professional jazz musician, in addition to being a Broadway performer and dancer. So I grew up with jazz around a lot, but I guess when I was a kid, I never really listened to it that much. When I sort of discovered it in a way that made me want to understand how to play it, because I think as I got older, I started to appreciate this high level of sophistication and virtuosity, you know, that I could hear was incredibly deep and profound, but I didn't understand it. So it made me want to try to learn how to do it. And along with Charlie Parker and Miles Davis and Wes Montgomery, Trane was one of some of the first records I had were John Coltrane records. even the Miles records that I had were of the Miles great quintet of the 1950s, in which John Coltrane was
Right.
one of the musicians. So, you know, he always just blew me away, you know. I've listened to so much of Trane's music. I can't tell you, like, records that I have that I've probably listened to them hundreds, if not thousands of times. And you know, the emotional power of his music, the amazing, you know, combination of the viscerally expressive and virtuosically astounding, you know, sort of traits, is something that has always just been a riveting and inspiring element of his music. Like, he was an incredibly virtuosic saxophonist who combined this great virtuosity with a very, it's hard for me. I always feel like I'm doing it an injustice by trying to verbalize my reaction to it, because it's such a powerful kind of musical, spiritual, emotional experience. But the combination of the visceral and the intellectual and virtuosic elements in his music is something that was always very profound. Ultimately, I don't want to say one element is more compelling than another, but the kind of emotional and aspect of his music and this urgency that still flies out of the speakers, you know, from a recording from 1963. I mean, there's a live recording of his group, which is referred to as the Classic Quartet. It was him, pianist McCoy Tyner, drummer Elvin Jones, and bassist Jimmy Garrison. And there's a recording from 1963 live in Stockholm of a famous tune of Trane's called Mr. PC. And I put it on now. Man, I start like running back and forth across the apartment. I mean, the energy, it's just, it's so...
To the point where it gets you like childlike, like you're like, it hits you in such a raw spot.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. It's just, it's so compelling. I mean, again, trying to articulate any of this verbally, if I put the record on, I think you would understand what I mean.
No, I get your point,
like,
though, too.
It's amazing, man. The energy and the and I've transcribed a good portion of the solo. Like, you know, I don't do this a lot with music that I really love to listen to, because I kind of want to just leave it in the realm of listening to it. But sometimes I'll be like, man, I got to figure out what he's doing here. And I've transcribed part of the thing. I mean, in addition to the fact that it sounds like it has the intensity of the most, you know, powerful, like, blues record you ever heard in your life, it's also, you know, under the hood, it's so fucking sophisticated, man.
That's
the thing that killed me about jazz music when I first, as I said, started to try to figure out what was happening. I was like, man, this has the power of Hendrix and the blues and blah, but there's this level of sophistication that takes it to another, like, this level of harmonic, melodic, rhythmic sophistication just adds to its power. You know, in the wrong hands, it can be, you know, boring and notey, but the masters, man, that shit is like the additional level of musical sophistication that exists in jazz music, to me, just adds to the potential of its you know, the delivery system, the emotional impact. You know, it's like
cool.
It's like more colors in the palette. So Trane's music continues to be to inspire me, you know, on a daily basis.
Would I be correct in saying that both Jimi and Coltrane in the sense that as technically suave as they were, as talented as they were, what they had on top of all those gifts, which probably already separates them from the pack, is cool. I mean, you know, just being cool.
You mean cool like hip cool or a nice
Yeah,
person?
yeah,
Hip,
yeah. Because you're delivering that sound, so that it's received in such a way. Like it's not like I don't understand musical theory or anything like that, but I know cool when I hear it. You know, you
but,
don't have to be deep to understand and appreciate Hendrix and
right.
Coltrane.
But by cool, what do you mean exactly? I want to understand.
That air there's something like that air, that additional their stamp on not just the talent, not the technical savvy stuff and or all the hard work that was put into being a great musician or something like that. On top of all that, it's like their personality, their it's just like, you know, their
Well,
truth.
ultimately, that's ultimately what it's about. You know, who are you?
But yeah, but only
How?
so many people get to that level and be appreciated by that many,
Yeah,
revered.
yeah. I mean, most people aren't that happening. Is it that John Coltrane and
Touche.
Hendrix? I mean, why did Bach? Why Chuck Berry? Why the
Yeah, no,
Beatles?
no.
You know, they're more
Yeah,
happening, and
yeah,
that's a very, very sort of inarticulate term, but it's like it's not for no reason. You know, there's plenty of people who, well, not plenty of people, but it's not about. I was talking years ago with a good friend of mine, and he was saying, well, you know, if you take John Coltrane, let's say, or Sonny Rollins, and another saxophonist of that period who had an incredible sound, who maybe had the same, you know, based on some of objective criteria, the same amount of saxophonistic technique, the same blah, 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 blah. What is it that separates?
right,
What is it that makes one person like a historical giant in music and the other person like a great player?
right, right,
Ultimately, it's like, I think it comes down to the thing that you were at least alluding to, like, who are you?
right.
What is what's the sort of, is your story really compelling, or your particular way of expressing what your experience has been as a human being compelling? You know?
Do you think that's vulnerability? Like when you're out there on the stage and you're ripping, that you're completely vulnerable? Like there's no pretense, there's no apprehension. It's complete, you know, expression.
I don't see it as being vulnerable. I just see it as being what's necessary to actually maybe have the even the remotest chance of creating something that's spontaneous or really of the moment. Um, I don't really feel I don't feel vulnerable.
I don't mean vulnerable in a sense that maybe you're taking the word as I'm saying. I mean as far as just being completely 100% uninhibited. Like it's not about, you know, what just happened getting out of the cab on the way into the venue. You know, it's like there's nothing but being in that moment 1000%.
No, no.
Oh, that was
And
great.
I hear you, and that's a good question, and my answer is no. There's all kinds of bullshit that's flowing through your head all the time. And to be able to sort of keep it at bay is part of the ability, and I think gets better as you have more experience performing. But there's always some
Yeah, I
trickling crap going
I
on.
get that, but what I'm referring to is those few, you know, maybe handful of moments when you're just going like this is different. This is one of those moments like musically. I can just remember being at shows and just going this
Right.
is fucking
But your
unbelievable.
experience of it is so much different than, as you know, than that mine is. You know, I've had the experience of playing, and as I'm sure you know, we musicians are very self-critical, And sometimes when you're playing, you might, you're trying to do something and you might be very disappointed with your own ability or your performance on a given night.
Yeah.
And I've had the experience where I've thought, oh, I'm just terrible tonight. I suck. And then finish the set and someone will come up and say, man, that was really amazing, right? The same set that I thought was. So what I've learned from that is that I don't actually know. When I'm in the creating whatever it is that's happening, I have all kinds of feelings about how it sounds or how I feel about it. But how I feel about it could be, the falafel I had for lunch. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that are not necessarily objective criteria from which to judge the quality of the music. Because somebody else might hear it and go, man, that was great. I didn't hear all those things you thought didn't sound good. Or I didn't feel like you felt. Maybe the club was hot and I was sweating and I didn't. So part of me has learned over the years from experience to just don't judge things as you don't know. Sometimes I had the opposite thing. I thought, man, this is so happening. And I'll make a recording, listen to it later and go, this is fucking lame.
Yeah.
You just don't know. And it's okay. You're not supposed to know. You're supposed to be in the thing, like the cauldron you're in the stew. You're not cooking it. Later you can taste it and see what, and then even that, it's like you might not like it, somebody else might like it. And this is a very common thing for musicians to go through. And I've had my first record, the first record that I did as a leader, right? Look, it's my name, the Adam Rogers Quartet. And I got the cassettes back, this is how long ago it was, to listen to the stuff, and I put it on and I went, this is terrible. I think this is horrible. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was so depressed, right? I called my friend on the phone. We used to call each other, play each other's stuff on the phone. And I played it for him. I said, man, I don't know. Would you listen to this? And I put it on, I played it for him. He goes, man, that sounds incredible. And I went, really? And then I started listening to it and I was like, oh, it's not so bad. And then I listened to it a few more times and I went, oh, this is okay. This is all right. Like, we really don't know.
You can't be objective in your own storm.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I've talked to other musicians about this. The rare opportunities you might, as a musician, hear a recording that you're on before you realize that it's you. I've had this experience a couple of times.
Say that again?
If
you're listening to something you did without realizing that it's you?
Yes. Like a record you played on, let's say it was playing in a restaurant. You walk into the restaurant and you hear it and you don't realize that it's you. And you listen to it without the perspective of, I'm listening to me. I'm telling you, man, it's pure psychology. I mean, it's amazing. And I've talked to other musicians about this, and you go, oh, that's what is that? That's pretty nice. And someone says, oh, that's you. And you go, oh, that's, I can't listen to it now. It's
Get my name off that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it doesn't, your perspective on things is, it's not objective. And realizing that that's the case is important, because you can really drive yourself crazy. Yes.
But you know what? As you're telling that story, I'm thinking, what a problem to have, man. I would love to experience that, from my, in real time, right? But that's like one of the bucket list experiences that you can't just go, like, I can't just take a trip to the Grand Canyon. That's one of them things that takes a lifetime of, But at the same time, your perspective and being in that moment, right? It's completely different, and I can't expect to understand, what that's like in your shoes. Nor would I dare.
Yeah,
but it does sound pretty good from the outside looking in.
Man, I'm not, it's the thing is the mind is a big place, right? So
yeah, well,
and
in your case,
no, I don't mean like intellectual capacity. I mean like, you can drive yourself so crazy, right, as a human being, right? I mean, you can create these sort of these potentially, if you don't have a lot of really threatening problems from the outside world, you can create quite a psychological labyrinthian maze of issues for yourself, right? I mean, I'm not even talking about people who have clinical problems,
Yeah.
schizophrenia or bipolar. Musicians are, I don't think I'm saying anything that's untrue by saying, we tend to be pretty obsessive personalities. Part of being a really good musician requires a sort of obsessive level.
Sure.
And, people with obsessive tendencies can drive themselves crazy.
Yeah. And the amount of sacrifice that it takes for you to accomplish what you've accomplished. I mean,
yeah, if you choose to, I think, again, people kind of tunnel vision, people like myself don't necessarily see it as sacrifice. It's just what you do.
No, right. Right. It's right. Your perspective of it is different than how I would see it. But at the same time, you do not get there without putting in those hours. You're just you're a master at what you do. Like, you're not just a guitar player, right? You're in an elite group of guitar players. So you don't get there by shooting dice and, going to the beach every day and just being living a nonchalant, there's work, there's effort, there's real focus that's involved. And
yes,
that's not considered you don't get to be an NBA ball player unless you put in the sweat and the equity that it takes, or a banker for that matter, if you're not a crook.
Right. I think that anything, any kind of deep craft, or even something that everybody wants to do because it, is potentially monetarily rewarding, requires time and effort.
Yeah.
I know for me, there's a tremendous amount of kind of substructure stuff that I can depend on because of all the work that I've done up until now. But the fluency, certainly in terms of my instrumental mechanism that is available to me on the instrument, is directly correlated to how many hours a day I spend doing it. I'm talking about this part of it,
Yep.
There's a lot of mechanical, neurological stuff that I feel is helped by regular, diligent practicing. Part of my partner was a professional competitive gymnast when she was young, and she coaches gymnastics. And she's an athlete. She says you guys are like athletes from the elbows down.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of
That's a good
physical mechanism
description.
it depends on what you're doing. If you're playing music that isn't really, really technically challenging, there's different levels of technique. The technique that is required to play a folk song on the guitar is not at all the amount of technique that's required to play a Bach violin sonata on the guitar. So what I do is technically demanding, and it requires, just in terms of upkeep. I'm not even talking about learning new shit, just to keep a baseline level of maintenance. For me to be able to start at a certain level and then go beyond that, it requires a lot of work.
We mentioned the names of a couple of horn players that you played with, Robbie and Chris Potter, right? What about drummers? I mean, there's two drummers in particular, Nate and Brian Blade. I mean, I see their styles being so different, but both so profound in their own way. What's your experience working with each one of them?
Wow, yeah. I mean, I love both of their playing so much, and as you said, they both are very kind of on the surface very different players, but there's a similarity in their playing in a sort of broad swath way, in that they are it sounds to me, and I think it reflects probably how they feel when they're playing, although I'm speculating about that since I'm not in their head, when they sound so utterly committed to what they're doing when they're playing that it always just knocks me out. Like it's never, they both share that thing that great musicians of playing any instrument have to me, which is like just this incredible commitment to what they're doing, and as a result, it's very authoritative musical consequence. Like it's not like, oh, I'm playing and I maybe I'll hit that cymbal. It's just like bash, with the just utter commitment, if that makes sense to you, which is a beautiful thing to be around and to participate in music making with people who have that level of musical commitment, draws that out of you as a musician. So that would sort of be the first thing that occurs to me. They are both very different players. I have the kind of blessed opportunity of playing in John Patitucci's group.
Yeah.
Equal amounts with both of them, because Brian was on the record, and I think you've seen us play together.
Sure.
And Nate, as of late, when we've played, we haven't been doing that much playing, also plays in that band. So I get to play the same music with the same two other musicians, but one sometimes with Brian, sometimes with Nate. And so it's so...
And it's the same music when you have, like, it changes in the ensemble, right?
Oh, yeah, no. And when Brian plays and when Nate plays, we play the same book.
Right.
So
are their styles, are they that similar? Because I see, maybe it's just that when I've seen Nate with, I guess just with you guys, with Patitucci and with also Dice.
Right.
And this guy leaves it all on the drum set. I mean, there's not an ounce of energy left when he's done.
Well, their styles aren't similar. We just play the same tunes, and they bring their different styles to bear.
Did you have to make an adjustment as a guitar player during that, based on their styles that they bring? What is it?
Yeah,
maybe not.
Of course, yeah. I make adjustments. Yeah, everything.
What are you, a jazz musician? I mean, come on.
Adjustments.
That's what I do. I do adjustments.
Adjustments are. That's the name of the game. Yeah, I mean, Nate probably plays. He plays a different kit. I mean, everything changes when you go from one person to another.
Brian Blade looks like he doesn't even break a sweat. I mean, you talk about cool. I mean, this guy is, man, like they said, the other side of the pillow, man. This is just like, he is it.
Yeah, he's an incredible musician.
Unbelievable.
And you can play anything with him. He has such a, as does Nate. It's just the specifics of the way they play are quite different, but they both, as I said, have that thing where it's like, all or nothing at all, and a real attention to the sound of the drums. Brian has such a particular sound on the drum set. I mean, how he tunes the drums, the sound of the drums, as does Nate. And these are all things, speaking of adjustments, if somebody, in case this is something that you're not aware of, like if you're playing the same music and one guy comes and he plays with a small bass drum, there's an 18-inch bass drum, a 20-inch bass drum, a 22-inch bass drum. Rock musicians, the louder the music, usually people play bigger bass drums.
Right.
The sound of the bass drum for all the other instruments in the group influences a tremendous amount of the sound in the group, right? If you're getting there's more sound coming off that bass drum, that means that you have to make adjustments to deal with that, right? It's like the difference to some extent, like if you're playing with an acoustic bassist or an electric bassist. If the bass is louder and more present, that affects my sound, right? I can't, if I have a lot of bass on my sound and an electric bassist also has a lot of bass, well, he's going to, on his sound, I have to maybe back off the bass on my sound, right? So I know these are specific kind of technical acoustic things, but I use it as just an example to say when the sound of one instrument in a group changes, everybody changes, even if it's not a conscious thing, right? It's like if I'm playing with a loud drummer, I'm going to play louder. If suddenly a drummer shows up and he plays 20 dBs quieter, it means I'm going to turn down. I'm not just going to keep playing the same, you know. So these are all the things that you just, as a matter of course, listen for and react to. So when Brian is playing and I hear his sound both, you know, in the sort of abstract, all the ways that he communicates his musical conception through the way that he plays the drums, I'm reacting to that. I'm also reacting to the sound that's coming off his drum set. When we play the same music with Nate, same thing. You know, he has a different sound, a different approach, a different way of subdividing rhythm. All of those things require, as a you know, an improvising musician, that you listen to and respond to all of that information. And it's beautiful, you know. It's a beautiful thing, those differences.
You know, you had mentioned too that I remember you had worked on Norah Jones's, was it her first album, her debut album, right? You had done. Yeah,
I played on the demos for her debut album, which one of the songs ended up on the debut album.
I just saw that Nate is on her current album.
Right.
At least a few tracks anyway, right?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing her at Le Poisson Rouge and Brian was, I mean, and just. Right. I mean, I remember watching him drum with her singing and just being like honored to be in that room. You know, like you with Patitucci and him playing, you know, it's like this amount of professional, it's like a supreme level of musicianship by a unit. And I'm just sitting there going like, how did I get in here? You know.
I'm so glad you appreciate it so deeply, Scott. It means a lot to us as musicians and performers to have somebody like yourself who appreciates the music so deeply. Like that's you're an important part of the band.
Well, you know what it is? I'm in awe. I really, and I don't say this in any other way. I'm a spectator, you know. But I've been a spectator often enough to understand that I can establish my own taste and my own preferences, and I feel that when I'm in the presence, or when I'm in the middle of that kind of creation, that's an honor for me. I don't know how to make. I sing in the shower and the water shuts off. It's not a pretty picture, so I don't go there. But that does not inhibit me from appreciating. I think that might be why I'm so in awe of what people can do musically. Right. It's just one of those gifts that I just, you know, it's just a beauty. It's a great thing.
You are an important participant in the making of the music. You know, if you put all of us in a room just by ourselves, it's very different than if there's an audience who is really moved by the music. Like that energy is, your energy at a performance is, you know, it gives us a lot of information. It's true, man. It's like, you know, like I said, if you put us all in a room by ourselves, we're going to have a blast playing, but that's a very different experience.
That's kind of like, we've just come full circle here, and I don't want to hold you up too long either. I appreciate and really do appreciate the time that, you know, that you spare me here. I'm grateful. But it is that reciprocation between the music that you give and how it's received and the response you get from that, right? That give and take. I'll be talking to Colin later, and you know, that whole world, they can't do, there's nothing you can't do you can't do a set on Zoom.
Absolutely.
They're fucked. There's no other way to say it. What did they do?
I have watched shows like Bill Maher's show or something, and where he does.
It took him about 6 weeks to just normalize that to, you know, that backyard thing that he's doing.
Yeah, but it's weird even from the vantage point of when he does his monologue at the beginning of the show.
There's no response. Yeah.
Laughter. It's like, it's kind of shocking, you know, even for the onlooker. Yeah, I mean, comedians you know, because if you're, even if there's two musicians and you're playing together, you have that other musician to
Yeah.
bounce things off of. Comedians are just,
Yeah.
you're playing by yourself. Um, but yeah, I mean, the audience performer relationship is one that I don't understand. I never will. I don't need to, but it's definitely, there's some, electromagnetism going on in a room that none of us really can describe, but it's
Yeah.
it's a big thing. There's so many variables, like what I was saying before when you asked me when you're playing, is it just this pure, concentrated, experience? There's so many experiences that you have when you play. Some guy off to the side who's doing something that maybe, you
Yeah.
pissing
Yeah.
you off.
See,
There's
that's the
some
difference.
you out that you're really, there's somebody looking at the drummer. The drummer's going through his set of things when he's playing. There's so, if you were to somehow, I'm serious, like isolate all of this on some non-existent energy spectrometer, it would probably be just like the amount of information going on would probably be so incomprehensible. Do you understand what I mean? Like
I,
the energy,
yes.
I think about this sometimes being a New Yorker, like as opposed to living somewhere where it's not so densely populated. If I think about just the amount of emotional and psychological stuff going on my block in all these buildings, right? Like all the stuff that people are going through
That's
in their,
overwhelming.
it's
That's
and
overwhelming.
that's an energy, man, right? I mean, I'm not like a frou-frou spiritual kind of person, but it's like, man, if you could measure that energy, it's probably just, biometrically or whatever, it's heavy. The energy that people generate, and I don't understand it, is it's profound. The energy that three musicians are generating while they're playing in a room by themselves is a lot, and you add the audience to that and all the things that start. I mean, it's fantastic. It's like, it's an amazing thing, all this stuff that's going on.
That's
And
always what made New York, in so many ways. I remember when I moved to LA, I just wanted to run around and start shaking people, like, fucking move. Just,
right,
do something. Just do
right,
something. I don't care. Every moment is not a meditative experience,
yeah,
I can remember waking up and just getting out the door to school. And I've already went through more than most people like from out there will go through probably in a week. Just trying to get, from point A to point B. Getting
right,
on a train and dealing with how many people squished, whatever. It's New York. We
yeah,
take it for granted. We don't even realize it's insane
yeah,
until we see something else. You mean
yeah,
everybody doesn't live like that? Wow.
right. Yeah,
It's
I know. And
profound.
then, some people at a certain point just go like, I've had enough of this, and
Yes,
you know,
but when you guys get together in your element, musicians, especially that's when we're going full circle yet again about you being a New York guy. When you get in that element with guys that from your soul, right? That's something too. There's kind of an unspoken understanding that you just know. It's an innate thing, I think.
yeah,
In
I'm,
anything, I mean, just in music, that's your field. That's what
right.
we're talking about. But in anything, you know.
I would agree totally.
Yeah. All right, listen, Adam. There's so much for me to try to process from this. I mean, this was like a education here, man.
Uh, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Scott. You have a great perspective on things, and I love the questions you ask, and so thanks for having me.
Well, listen, it's my pleasure. Thank you. And listen, anybody who wants to, you had mentioned you're doing some of these online things like that. Are they open to anybody?
Yeah,
Well, how would
I
they reach you and find them?
look at my Facebook page. I can send you some of the links as they appear. There's something right now that's I'm not sure when you're going to air this, but there's a great thing called Live from Our Living Rooms. I'm not sure how long it's going to be available to watch because they're replaying these live stream things in the hopes that more people will donate to the cause of helping musicians in need. There's going to be something at the end of August that I'm doing, which is actually a masterclass workshop as part of a friend of mine, a guitarist named Joel Harrison, who does what's called the Alternative Guitar Summit. It's a masterclass at the end of August, myself and a few other guitarists. And then I'm in the process of figuring it all out, but I'm going to try to start doing some sort of regular live streaming, like workshops and maybe performances through my own website, adamrogersmusic.com.
Which let me know when you're doing that, and I'll definitely help you put that out there and just push that for you for sure.
I recently redid my website, and there's all kinds of new stuff up there. And everything that I'm going to be doing will be advertised on the website.
What is your website?
AdamRogersMusic.com.
Go figure. How'd you come up with that name?
It's funny, man.
One of those moments, just with total alchemy. Well, listen. Please check out Adam's website, and if you like this show, I need subscribers, so please subscribe On the Roof with Scott on YouTube. And Adam, I can't wait to do this again.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you for having me.
You are the man.
Doing what you're doing. It's a great show.
Well, listen, that's a high praise from you, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the best, brother.